Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I know we only have 30 minutes and we have at least, 4 topics, lots to go on, but I feel like the time pressure that we're dealing with is a little similar to the time pressure that we all kind of feel when it comes to climate change. There's so much to do, so much to talk about, and not a lot of time to do it. So I will ask our panelists to do a self-introduction and then also address our first topic today, which is the general role of autonomous and electric vehicles in creating sustainable urban mobility. And George, why don't you go first?
So this is George. Our company is called Pony.ai. So I joined Pony.ai like 4 years ago for the investment and investor relation payment. So Pony.ai is a company with a vision to autonomize the mobility section. Namely, we're doing robotaxi, robocharging, and ADAS systems. So we're now one of the largest robotaxi and robotruck company in the world. So as of now, we're $8.5 billion US valuation company, and we have footprints in the 4 largest cities in China, in Korea, in Luxembourg, and in the broader Middle East region. And we have been conducting the fully driverless commercial ride in Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, the largest cities in the world, each with over 20 to 25 million people. So in terms of the autonomous driving, autonomous driving, that what kind of value that we can bring to the society, I think, first of all, it definitely cuts a lot of costs to the general public, right? So something like 80% or 60% of our cost of the ride is composed of labor costs. So once we can be autonomous, fully driverless, we don't have to pay the high price anymore. And secondly, in today's world, we're facing labor shortage. A lot of people, the new generation, they don't want to drive the taxi or truck anymore, right? So in some areas of the globe, we see a shortage in labor. So autonomous driving solve that problem. And third, we believe in the future we have like thousands or 10,000 of vehicles. Statistically speaking, the safety issue will be solved by autonomous driving. We will create a much safer society for the world. And lastly, the autonomous driving technology, a lot of times it uses electric vehicles. So it solves the carbonization problem as well. So that gives you company and what this can solve in the worldwide issues.
Robert, you're next. I'm guessing you agree at least in some ways with the trucking issue.
Yeah, thank you, George. Great introduction for the case for change, why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing. And my name is Robert Ziegler. I'm general manager for Europe and the Middle East at Einride. And at Einride, what we do is focus on the logistics sector, on the heavy duty logistics sector. And our path is to digitize it, electrify it, and then also go autonomous with it. So in the first step, we kind of we transform our customers' diesel fleets of today into fully electric trucks with driver. And then we go to second step. And if later you're going out having a burger at the parking, you can see one of our autonomous electric trucks out there that we already have in operations in the public, both in Europe and in the US. So basically, the road that we take our shippers on is that we take them out of the last millennium in terms of logistics. So lots of logistics are still being operated with, faxes, mobile phone. Digitalization is when you basically scan that fax and get that PDF. So there's a lot more that can be done in terms of optimizing the logistics industry and increasing utilization. With that already saving a lot of CO2, making it a lot more sustainable. Then obviously going electric, we're saving another 95% of CO2. There's still some embedded CO2 in the vehicle itself. But in terms of operations, it's completely free. And then as a part of that, we integrate that into a digital ecosystem. Because just having an electric truck is not solving your problem. You need to have the charging infrastructure. You need to have the operational integration of the data, of the telematics of the truck, the battery management, the charging infrastructure. the operational systems of the shipper to be able to manage it all in a way that the driver will not run out of energy, and the driver will not take his break when he actually needs to charge. All right, so we make sure that we integrate all of that into a digital network to optimize that, so that the transition from diesel to electric is very easy and very good already. And in the future, it's going to be dead cheap. In a couple of years, electric heavy-duty trucking is going to be such a no-brainer that everybody who buys an electric diesel truck today has to learn a new word or two new words. Stranded assets. That's an asset that you cannot sell anymore because there's no more market. All right. In a couple of years, that is what's going to happen very, very fast. And then the next step is to go autonomous, because once you have digitalized it and you've centralized all the information and the brains and the planning, then taking the driver out of the truck is a very easy step. And there's a lot of companies that have worked around, autonomous trucking, but we have a very different philosophy. Number one, our truck is electric from the start. Why would we work with an old technology to build it? Number two, it doesn't have a cabin. We don't need a driver. Therefore, we don't need a cabin. Right? And that is an important step forward. When you drive a taxi, robot taxi, it's not people in the taxi, right? And you need that. That's what the taxi is for. But the truck doesn't need that. It just has goods in it, right? And it doesn't need the driver. Having the driver out is the whole point, right? So that's why our electric truck, and you can see it outside, doesn't even have a cabin, but it has remote supervision, right? It runs autonomously, but still the supervised by human, although remote. Sorry for the long introduction, but that's where we see the future going. It's digital first step, electric next, and then that's on this happen.
Good introduction. Bring this over to Mike, and I know that the way that you and InMotion look at things is quite broad, not only with electric and autonomous, but how does that?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Smeed. I'm the managing director of InMotion Ventures. We are the investment arm of Jaguar Land Rover, an automotive company based in the UK. We're an early stage investor, so we typically invest in C to Series A companies in the climate, industrial, and enterprise technology spaces that are going to be critical to the transformation of JLR in the future. And I completely agree with you, Sebastian, what you described. Our remit is quite broad in those spaces, and whilst autonomous driving from an investment perspective is not within our remit right now, we're actually interested in more some of those enabling technologies around autonomous driving to do with vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity, to do with some of the smart cities, the cameras, sensors, whether it's LiDAR, radar, or other forms of enabling technologies that are really going to help with the transition to autonomous vehicles, regardless of how far, whether it's level 2 all the way through to 5, and so on. We really echo your points around safety angle. And the belief in our vehicles is that you should feel more relaxed when you come out of our vehicles than you did when you went in to the vehicle. So that's our really approach to that.
I like the optimism and the possibilities that are expressed here. Mike, let's stick with you. I know that the next topic, we want to get into some of the challenges, some of the difficulties that are going to sort of be, that we need to work on, which also result in more opportunities. But the way that the InMotion looks at, the broad scope, I know that you also have something called an open innovation strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that can be applied to EVs, autonomous vehicle and electric?
Yeah, sure. So JLR's open innovation program is very broad. It's right through from projects, POCs, a venture studio, as well as going into strategic partnerships and the venture capital arm that we're a part of. And I think it's a recognition, as you see many other OEMs represented here today, that companies can't do this all on their own. There's so much going on within automotive, not just within the product itself, whether it's electrification, different propulsion systems, powertrains, but there's so many things going on in terms of the relationship with the customer, as well as different geographic regulations and changes. And it was really interesting in this morning's conversations over in the main arena when they were talking about the fact that in Abu Dhabi, really looking to get land, sea, and air together at one kind of regulatory system, whereas in many parts of the world, and in Europe in particular, where we are focused right now, even cities haven't got that level of collaboration amongst land, sea, and air, or parking, or trains, or different forms of infrastructure. So that's really where we are focused on right now.
We'll just go with passing the mic back to Robert. Can you talk a little bit about how your focus on delivery vehicles is really applicable to AVs and EVs instead of, working in a passenger car or working in robotaxi or something like that?
Yeah. First of all, slightly more precise. We're working on the middle mile more, not so much in the delivery space. So we really want to be heavy goods vehicles, 20-ton plus. And we're now operational with 30, 40 medical companies around the world, almost 1,000 trucks operational. And it is really a very different world because you're able really to define where the trucks go. So you have a very different approach to. First of all, we're not an OEM. All right, so we develop, but we don't necessarily manufacture. And what we develop is mostly the brain behind. Well, but nobody needs to develop a new truck. Right? We know how to do that. Nobody needs to develop a new electric truck. OEMs know how to do that too. So what is important is the intelligence behind that and the integration and the autonomy, the artificial intelligence that's in there. That is what we do, what we integrate. And we find it a lot easier to do that in logistics because we know exactly what the vehicle is going to go. It's not like in a taxi where before the passenger gets in, well, maybe you share with you where you're going to. But still, that is, the vehicle basically needs to be able to solve any kind of situation. It needs to be able to operate any kind of market. We can say, we're just running, from this factory to this distribution center. And it's the same road every day, back and forth, back and forth. And those are also the first use cases that you would start to operate because it's basically an extension of automation in the factory. We're already seeing, and up comes like a Land Rover, right? Highly automated in the factory. And then all of a sudden, you have some of the forklifts that push the pallets to the truck. And after that, it's all pen and paper. Yeah, kind of straight. So what we're doing is we're working with companies like General Electric in the U.S., highly automated manufacturing as well. And they're now automatically loading our trucks. And then they drive autonomously to a distribution center and automatically get unloaded as well. And then it drives back. It drives back and forth, back and forth. It does nothing else 24/7. No brakes, well, except for a little bit of charging here and there. And that's basically what you do when you load and unload. But it's no driver involved, right? Yes, remotely, right? But that driver can make you switch positions on the go. Because it's not on the vehicle, sitting at some office somewhere. Could be remotely anywhere. We've operated our vehicles in Sweden from Austin, Texas. And there's no issue. You can completely dissociate the driver from the truck. And that allows us to then, in the very near future, basically change the relationship between the driver and the vehicle. So a driver could be supervising 10 vehicles. And this is when you're starting to have a huge cost reduction kick in. And apart from the truck being very simple, basically, it's an electric skateboard. It's a computer in front, and the rest is loaded. Be that a container or a swap body or a box or a freighter or whatever. And so it's a very, very simple vehicle. You take away 60-70% of the complexity, but they cannot have it. And so the bill of material becomes a lot cheaper. The whole vehicle is a lot cheaper. And then when the driver also can work at a ratio of 1 to 10, all of a sudden driver cost is dropping as well, massively. And already today in most countries around the world, driving electric on the kilometer is cheaper than driving with diesel. So the operational cost is coming down, driver cost is coming down, the original hardware cost is coming down, and overall trucking is going to drop 30-40%. And that's going to revolutionize a lot.
George, both Robert and Mike mentioned the partnerships between startups, OEMs, this universe. I know that Pony.ai has signed an MOU with Toyota and amongst others. Let me tell us about how this kind of partnerships really work to helps the adoption of agents.
Speaking of Toyota, a little bit more background about our Toyota relationship. 5 years ago in 2019, Toyota came to China. They want to do autonomy. They want to do robotaxi. Eventually, after a year of diligence, they finally signed with us. And in the year of 2020, not only did they start to collaborate with us, but also they made a investment, top. So we become their one and only partner in this space, in robotaxi space in China. And over the past 4 years, we have developed like 2 samples of robotaxis. The first one with Lexus, the second one with Sienna. And towards the end of last year, Toyota was very satisfied with the accomplishments or milestone we have delivered to them. So they decided to create a joint venture between Pony and Toyota in Guangzhou in China. So we have formed a joint venture that's targeting a mass production and deployment in 2025. We'll bring the robotaxi scale from today's like dozens of taxis or hundreds of taxis to thousands of taxis in 2025. And that's never happened anywhere in the world before, right? Not in America, not in Europe, not in Asia. So we'll be the first one to have work with an international global the largest one to mass produce robotaxis. And these taxis has no driver in it. And it's not remote control. It's fully driverless by itself. It's on the car autonomy, right? So I should say, so back to your question. We're a startup. We're like 100,000 people, a bunch of smart people. But, in order to have the business hit the ground running, have all the engineering work accomplished, there's a lot of, dirty and, hands-on work that we should do, in the factory, in the plants. So we don't have that experience. So startup is very keen at, being very, smart and, fast. However, we don't necessarily have all the engineering work on the ground. So having a partnership with Toyota, lays a good foundation for us. And, that's also, it's also a good, recognition of our, work that we do, that we really have the technology that's okay, that's safe and okay to get on the road and doing autonomy. So yeah, back to your question.
That's Mike. Anyway, Robert, I want to get back to you because you mentioned one remote driver can operate up to 10 trucks, so that's kind of the idea. The next topic that we wanted to get to is autonomous vehicles and their impact on traffic and about those reducing emissions. I know it's not what you meant, but like here, instead of one person controlling one vehicle, now one person is sending control 10. That sounds like more trucks on the road. What can you tell us? How does this type of AV technology help reduce traffic and also reduce emissions?
Yeah, let me get a very simple example based from the grocery retailers. All right, so grocery retailers, they have software stores in cities, from distribution centers that are usually outside the cities. And if you're doing that with a diesel truck, you're prohibited from using that at night. If you do it with an electric truck already, you can do that at night, but meaning, say, first of all, that truck is not signable, quality is stay in the store. Lot of worlds actually build the shelves, books, maybe that's so needs to the won't get on site. This was like what better than that. Why it's shot with Alice here, well, I just some videos on the 2000 house. But I was supposed to become a machine out of earlier one. Maybe it's both cities, municipalities. It's really to say, we don't need us. Certainly not. So you tell us all when we'll talk about that or then also some of the housing not necessarily have more trucks, less trucks, and to automate so that is a trend that we already have. Somebody would store laws. But like $300,000 Europe, I think it's another $300,000 in the US. It's a similar number. So no need actually wants to live that lifestyle. And the Poland's then was continuing. But nowadays, I think people would prefer to be working on a social arm, be working about, look, still to outside, trees need it. So it's incredible improvements on it to the not. So we need what you directly in a direct hearing growth. If we're not showing stability, costing up, so I got safety, right? That's definitely autonomy and exhaustion evolved. But we have all the side effects that do not necessarily think enough that are all seen, autonomous, lies and mitigating them. And you're actually reducing the number of parts. Again, back to the growth of retail. If you can run 3 shifts a day or 2 shifts, you need very less parts.
We'll go to Mike for this one. I know that JLR has tech hubs around the world. What have you learned, either with the companies you're working with, or just in general as an OEM, about how autonomous vehicles affect traffic in different places, based on what you've seen?
Yeah, sure. If I could just go back to what you've just mentioned, Robert, I think it's how we use the information that those commercial vehicles have, because those vehicles will have cameras to help their autonomous driving systems, which means that cities are better able to spot gridlocks when that happens, and then they can amend the traffic lights and the other systems to enable other traffic to move more freely than they otherwise would. So I think, as you described, it's not necessarily just that single case in itself. It's the whole system around it, which will enable, again, better safety, better tracking of vehicles. As you mentioned, as a global OEM, we have a significant number of engineering facilities around the world, and really that's in recognition that the pace of innovation is happening at different points around the world, and also recognizing that our customers and our clients in different places around the world have very different needs and very different views of what luxury means. From a Range Rover or a Defender in the East Coast of the US would be very different to what you maybe have here in the UAE, and is very different to in China as well. And the perfect example of that is in the UK. It's very it's very common for the purchaser of the vehicle to be the person who's driving the vehicle, whereas we know in countries like China, the person who's actually purchased a vehicle maybe actually sat in the back of the car, not the front. And again, making sure that the experience that the owner of the vehicle has in the second row or even the third row of the vehicle is as premium as the one in the front, I think is a great example of that. So a recognition really that different parts of the world are moving at very different paces, and also that innovation is happening all across the world as we've seen here today.
And George, we were talking a little bit backstage about different cities Pony operates in China, but you're also doing deals in Europe, other places. What can you say about the sort of differences in different places and how AVs can help the traffic issue?
Okay. So I think today, people talk about globalization and people talk about deglobalization. So as a startup, our ambition, not only are we going to grow in China, but we also want to grow outside of China internationally. So in today's geopolitical environment, when we are going out of China to, Middle East or Europe or other countries, we play it very cautiously, right? So we don't think there are too many companies in the world that can do the kind of software or algorithm that a top company can do, like us. But when in terms of data protection, data security, cybersecurity, we have to be more cautious. Product to the Western, the Middle East, other countries. Data protection. We have to make sure the data doesn't get transmitted between countries. We have to make sure we're abided by the local legislation and the local regulations. So we have to, at the same time, we also have to protect our IP. So in today's world, when, there are people who are pro-globalization, definitely the work is easier. But in places where we have to be more careful, we talk about legal, we talk about IP, we talk about data protection all the time. So I think these are the issues that we have to be taken care of more cautiously than before.
I promise we are running out of time, but as a wrap up here, we started with sort of the situation, talked about the challenges, some of the details. Let's look to the future. It's always a good place to end a panel like this. Robert, we'll start with you because your trucks, I think, look very futuristic. When all of you look forward in about a little over a minute each, where do you see the future taking us with the AV and EV technologies?
Well, let me also talk a little bit about UAE.
Sure.
Because this is where we are today. This is also what we're talking about. It's one of the countries, its region in general, is very much leading into. It's one of the few countries in the world that actually has a target of total autonomy. So it is something that we're, and there may be more news next week. I can't comment on it right now. But there's maybe some really exciting news. There's a lot of support. I mean, we've been present here now for a couple of months in UAE. We have full support from the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. We have great support from the Integrated Transport Center here, and the lovely the players in the region. And the interest here is very, very strong. And typically, this region leapfrogs technology. Right? Doesn't necessarily go back to, what we used to 10 years ago, go to more motion, and it didn't go to next step. And this is also why we're bringing up technology here. And we're probably going to our next generation autonomous vehicle, also premier. So for us to very much any country that has embodies in the spirit of driving these technologies forward and leapfrogging the old technologies. And there's a lot of leapfrogging to do, right? I mean, the CO2 that we can save by going from a 35-year-old truck here into a brand new electric truck is, and so the potential is huge. The change that we can achieve is great. I mean, all major OEMs around the world now manufacturing electric trucks. So everybody has understood that this is where we've been going. And about other steps. And as we're seeing right now, we're way beyond prototype stage. We're in the actual operation stage. We're one vehicle 7 Vietnam operations out there also in space. But I would see growth rates of 500% of electrification in the coming years, and probably about 10-20% also others, a little bit slower, and it would depend very much on the locals, on the regions, on how much they support this, how easy they make the regulatory process.
George, what does the future look like from your perspective in China and elsewhere?
The future? Yeah, so we're under a lot of time pressure here. So I think right now in China, the 4 biggest cities like Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, each city has over 20 to 25 million people, right? So in total, those 4 cities has almost 100 million people. And that's basically equivalent to a few millions of robotaxi kind of addressable markets. And today, China is a big country with a lot of population, but still China is also a country that has aging problem. People who are born after 2000, probably in 10 years, they do not want to drive again like their fathers, right? So we're facing a lot of labor shortage probably in the next 10 years. So that's why I think, either in the taxi or in the trucking space, we need autonomy. Electrification in China is already 50%, largest in the world. So autonomy kind of penetration will definitely be the next. And China has the largest transportation system, one of the largest population. I believe definitely in the future, we can build in China and gradually expand to like UAE or other part of the world in the Western world. So I think that's where the future is.
Mike, we'll end with you briefly. The future, yeah, we're getting there.
No, I agree. I mean, I think without a doubt, the commercial use case for autonomous driving is going to be significantly ahead of passenger vehicles. And to the degree to which we move from assisted driving to full autonomy, I think it's the question that all OEMs are trying to answer. They answer sure.
Excellently well done. Thank you all for joining us. Can you please join me in thanking our panelists, Mike, Robert, and George? Thank you all very much.